Yo, what's going on, everybody? And today we have a very special interview with the most notorious and most hated Boston sports fan out there. As the sports radio talk show hosts in Boston do refer to him as, his name is Jake in Boston. I will put a clip of him if you're not familiar with him.
That'd be the last thing.
Do you want to go from tight ends to quarterbacks in this league right now?
Yes. I had the best quarterback coach at
tight ends is such
quarterbacks. Oh my God, Jake!
Quarterbacks is the primary. You want to be quarterbacks coach, then OC.
Okay, so
that's usually the path.
That's our progression right now.
Yeah.
Jake in Boston is here.
Oh boy.
We'll get to that in a moment as well.
It's a cute jacket, Jake.
All right, don't go anywhere. Zolak
nice.
and Bertrand live from Radio Row in Vegas.
However, he is one of the most successful NIL sports marketers out there. He is a mastermind with content. And even though he has some very, very outrageous takes, and I don't necessarily agree with everything he says, I was very surprised at what we talked about in this interview. We're here to talk about today the Bill Belichick and Jordon Hudson drama that is going on and continuing to be an ongoing development. We're here to talk about Boston sports, NIL marketing, his niche, which is he focuses on how the wives and girlfriends, the wags of the different star players and coaches affect how they perform out on the field. So it's going to be a very exciting one. We also get into a lot of other stuff that I didn't expect. And yeah, let's get right into it. Make sure that you drop a like and subscribe before we get into it. And if you want me to interview anybody else, drop them in the comments and make sure you let me know. And I'll reach out to them and see what we can do and see what we can make happen. I love this interview style content. So let's just jump in. All right. So here we have Jake in Boston, known as probably Boston sports fans' most notorious public figure. Jake,
or hated.
How are we doing?
Or hated.
Or hated. How are we doing today, Jake?
I'm doing all right. How are you guys doing? How are you doing, Kyle?
I'm good. Jake in Boston, tell me who that is from your perspective.
The character or personally?
Well, do you put on a character?
I would say yes and no. I would say, the reason why it came about was my overall frustration with the lack of journalism that you see sometimes out of our beat reporters who cultivate their relationships a little too closely and, won't necessarily report on things that are that do matter, that sometimes people think are more personal. But, we're at a stage of the game where sports gambling is everywhere. And every little piece of an athlete's life can be psychoanalyzed. Every little thing matters. It's just bringing it to the surface and realizing that, hey, the fact that your starting center might not get 8 hours of sleep because they have a 6-month-old at home, that may matter if they're sitting around on a Saturday night before you're playing a 4:00 game. Especially if you're going to put money on the game, like that could get your quarterback killed to some degree. But I think realistically, some of it is fun and some of it is addressing a lack of journalism that exists in this space right now.
But everything that you basically say, all of your takes that you bring onto sports radio and all this, do you believe in all of your takes?
Yes. I honestly do believe that the Patriots dynasty was curtailed by key figureheads being a little too attached to their significant others, to their phones, to their celebrity spouses. I firmly believe that. I firmly believe that, one of the things that the Celtics had to overcome was the fact, and I think you see this, and I hate to give him a compliment, but LeBron's going to play basketball at 41 next year at a high level, because I think there's a difference in the compete level, upbringing, work ethic, etc., between that generation of NBA player and the one that we saw here. And the Celtics championship last year was a tremendous step in their maturity level. And that was more important even than the championship ring itself. I do believe that Carol Lawson or Don Staley will be a great NBA coach if given the opportunity. I don't sit here and make crap up for the sake of making crap up. It comes within totally believing it. And, some of it may come across as pressing buttons, but the fact of the matter is some of it's uncomfortable truths and some of it's all genuine in a sense. And that's why I think I can pull it off and feel comfortable with who I am at the end of the day.
Okay. And when did you first take on this persona?
Honestly, the first time I got aggressive about it was after the Pittsburgh Patriot game in 2018. And I think that was the synagogue in Pittsburgh had just gotten shot up. And Julian Edelman had custom cleats done that he was showing off before the game. And I was like, okay, that's nice. But then I saw at 3:30 Tom Brady liked the post. And this was back in days where you could pay attention to who was doing what when. And Jared Carrabis did this with Pablo Sandoval. And I'm like, why is Tom Brady liking posts 50 minutes before a big game? Like, why is he on his phone? Why are we not locked in? Of course we lose the game. And I'm like, Jesus effing Christ, is our entire team on their phones their entire time? Like, rather than mentally. Super Bowl 36, the famous story is Tom Brady took a nap before the game. And I'm like, I like that Tom Brady. I don't necessarily like this Tom Brady. And so the next day I called up Felger and Maz, and I was like, why are all these players liking posts before the game? Like, did we lose that game because we didn't have our heads in the game? So it started there. And then as I paid more attention to it, as I paid more attention to mapping the inner circles of individuals and who they were connecting with and when they were connecting with them, I did start to build theories based off of it. And I did start to realize, like, hey, a lot of the dots do connect in this sense. And, you know, Tom was just in the wrong place at the wrong time for that, because I don't necessarily have those concerns about him. But there are many, many, many other individuals that I have had those concerns about. So that's where it started. Now, a lot of people, you know, will say, well, how does that benefit society? In my real life job, I ran a PR campaign with several NFL players on the Pittsburgh Steelers a couple years later, where we basically paid them to get off of social media and to broadcast that they were getting off of social media. And I think they won their last 2 games en route to a playoff berth. And it started with TJ Watt, and I think there were 7 or 8 other players. And during that year's Super Bowl, we had TJ talk about it on a PR tour, and Joe Burrow, who had made the Super Bowl, was also talking about how he logged off of social media for that standpoint.
LeBron, and you mentioned him, you wanted to give him a little bit of a compliment, saying that
it's hard for me to do.
He's going to be playing at 41. And, you know, at the same time, all these Gen Z type of athletes are doing it the wrong way compared to him. But LeBron is a lot more present in the media nowadays. He's on podcasts, he's on commercials, and not just that, he's very active on social media. Why can someone like LeBron do it, and these younger athletes can't emulate that same thing while playing at a high level for the length of their career? Did he earn it? Did he have to earn it?
So I think with LeBron, and I think if this is not a generational thing, I think this is a maturity thing. You know, I think as you age, you learn to take care of your body. I think we saw it with Tom. I think we're seeing it with LeBron. I think we saw it with Roger Federer. I think we see it with any aging athlete. And we're seeing it more with that 35-plus athlete. You're seeing more and more of those athletes learn to take care of their body and almost treat it like a scientist. I think some of it is just immaturity, and I think that was part of the Celtics problem and the Celtics challenge, and I think that's why last year was an important part of their story, getting over that hump. But I think realistically speaking, there's also a level of LeBron was from the last generation of athlete that when they graduated high school, when they were playing their first season in the pros, or in his case, his first 4 or 5 seasons, he did not have a smartphone. The smartphone, the version that we all know, the iPhone came out in 2007. And so I think the smartphone has had a lot to do with that. It's had a lot to do with our connectivity. It's had a lot to do with everything. So he was the last generation of the pre-smartphone athlete. And I think you're seeing those last generation of pre-smartphone athletes. Al Horford would be another one, who have excelled. And I think that's one of the reasons, as part of their upbringing.
And the guy like Jayson Tatum, star of the Celtics right now, he's a little bit more mature than he was last year, according to you. What contributed to his immaturity before they won a championship? Does some of these displays of immaturity still show and ring true today?
I think for Tatum specifically, there is a take I have told Adam, who you and I both mutually know, and it was a lifestyle choice he made at 19. and one that most other athletes around him probably do not make. And at that point, Deuce has a lot to do with it, in my opinion, of like, okay, Tatum and Deuce became a thing at 19, 20, 21. And you had a 21-year-old trying to manage having a 1 to 2-year-old at home while trying to take the most important steps of their career in terms of learning and education, which is your first 2 or 3 years in a professional setting. So that balancing act, I think it does come across bad. And take a young parent like a Jayson Tatum coming into the NBA. His team has obviously invested tens of millions of dollars and an extremely valuable draft asset. It doesn't get talked about enough. Like, that was a really, really interesting decision at 19 and 20 to decide to, hey, I'm going to have my child. I'm going to raise that child as a single parent. And I think I'm not saying it cost them the 2008 Eastern Conference Finals, but I do question where a young athlete's focus is if that's the personal decision they're looking to make.
And what do you think about, I guess, moving away from the Celtics, what about the Patriots? What do you think about the Patriots right now? And how do you like the team? And where do you think the athletes' heads are at?
So Mike Vrabel's wife is not a big 30-something followers private account. Vrabel did an interview with, what was it, the Bussin' Boys, where Vrabel's talking about his extracurricular activities, unlike Bill Belichick's, and very similar to Al Bundy on Married with Children. And it's like the way he talks about marriage and children and family is very much like football's my escape, not that this is a way to amplify the experience. So I think that's a positive from a lifestyle standpoint. Now, do I think Mike Vrabel knows how to coach an offense? I don't know. We'll have to see. He got Ryan Tannehill to an AFC championship game, but he still had Ryan Tannehill as his starting quarterback. So we'll have to see that. I think the challenge with the Patriots here going forward is, number one, can they keep Drake May from finding the distractions that Mac Jones had in year 2? Mac Jones was, and I hate to say it because his firm does really great work, Mac Jones was over-marketed heading into year 2. It set stupefyingly high expectations. It set unrealistic expectations. It created a sense of entitlement and ego that Mac Jones was the guy. That's on how good of a job his marketing firm did, and almost pulling the distraction away from here's Mac, the second-year quarterback, learning in a new system, to Mac Jones as a superstar, and here's Fitzy and Sully basically, losing their collective minds over how great he was before, obviously, year 2 kicked off. So I think for Drake, it's keep your head down, stay humble, keep Ann Michael. Keep Ann Michael keep her down at business school at Keenan Flagler in North Carolina. Like, let her do her own thing. Don't turn her into an influencer. Don't have your agency turn her into an influencer. Keep your head down. It does help in his case that he is the youngest of 4 boys. Tom Brady was the youngest of 4. The birth order aspect of it, I think, helps keep him mentally on the right path. But just avoid all stupid distractions with your second-year quarterback.
Fair enough. If you were to give a prediction, where did the Patriots finish this year in the AFC East?
Probably 3rd. 2nd or 3rd, 8 wins, miss the playoffs.
Behind whom? Bills, of course. Definitely
the Bills. I do think the Jets have the talent on paper. I think the Dolphins, if Tua stays healthy, can win games. Chris Greer, like Daddy, has run that team into the ground in Miami, but they still have talent. I would say in terms of talent, they are still the 4th best team in the AFC East. I would say in terms of things that could go wrong with 2 of those 3 teams that are not named Buffalo, I still think they're in 3rd place at the end of the day.
Fair, for sure. And I like how you approach. I might not necessarily agree with everything that you said, but I like how you approach things from the player marketing standpoint. You worked in NIL marketing, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I was the first one to sign an NIL deal with the Cavinder twins on July 1st, 2021.
The Cavinder twins. One is now currently trying to keep a WNBA spot.
Just know about the breakups.
Yes, the breakups.
Or the breakup.
That was a big deal. That was a big deal. What's your thoughts around the Carson Beck? What are your thoughts around the breakup?
I mean, it should be the warning for all young athletes about the dangers of this stuff. And the reason why Carson Beck wasn't the number one pick of this year's NFL draft is he found distraction. He did not log off his phone. He did not stay single. He found every problem you could legally, not drugs, didn't get arrested. He's not a bad guy in that sense, but like, put down your fucking Snapchat. And it cost him. It cost him $30-something million because he's going to get 4 or 5 from Miami this year, and he could have gotten 40 if he was a top 5 pick. So that's the kind of stupid money you could lose if you give in to social media temptation, if you give in to the limelight temptation, if you do end up dating an influencer. And that's all on him. That is all on him. It is not on the Cavinders have done a great job building out their business. They've done a great job in terms of marketing themselves, in terms of they're the ones who have stayed focused in terms of that balancing act. But yeah, it was Adam and Eve all over again.
Showing restraint when it comes to social media, when you know that you're an athlete and you have this type of influence. I heard that you worked on a deal with the Alabama football players, an NIL deal to not post on social media during Bama Rush Week.
Yes.
What inspired this and what came of it?
Honestly, I was looking to capitalize off of Bama Rush, and I had a product which was mostly male focused. So that's tough to do in terms of sorority life. So Alabama football was the workaround. And the whole Bama Rush phenomenon has captivated me for the last 4 or 5 years now. In fact, one of our undrafted free agents, his name is Dupree, I believe, tight end.
CJ Dupree.
Yeah, CJ is dating an Alabama cheerleader. Her name is Riley. And so there are those weird convergences, but you have someone like Bella Grace Gates come in to school with 500 followers and then in a week and a half have 6-figure follower counts. Like, you don't get that anywhere else. And so that fascination as a brand marketer really appeals to me because you like to hack solutions. Like, it's one thing to go and work with Levy Thomas or Livy Thomas after she's done the Jake Paul fight and gone from 100,000 followers to 1 million followers. But you're paying for a premium. You would much rather jump onto an influencer in that space or talent in that space that come in with 700, 1,500, even 10,000 followers, and you're the reason they 20x. You're the reason they 30x. You're the reason they go and they hit that 1 million follower plateau. That's what I like to try and do. It's a growth hacking mechanism of looking at your ideal PR opportunity. In that case, we wanted to piggyback off of Bama Rush. It backfired in a sense when Jermaine Burton got caught forcefully handling a Tennessee student as Tennessee fans rushed the field after they beat Alabama in 2022. And we got do you stand by Jermaine Burton? Is this your athlete type of deal? But I think the reality of the situation is we looked at Bama Rush as something to gravitate towards.
And you worked with Malachi Moore, right?
If I recall correctly, yes, he was part of that group.
Future Jet legend right there. Around the current NIL landscape, what do you think about how it's evolved into what it is today? How would it be better served? What can be improved about it in your eyes?
So the problem that existed with NIL is the NCAA got caught blindsided. They were arrogantly caught blindsided. It's like if you ask Bill and Jordon, hey, how are you feeling today is how you were feeling 5 months ago about your relationship. It's like, oh, we didn't know this was going to happen. Of course you knew it was going to happen. You've got an age gap in your relationship of 50 years. Of course you knew it was going to happen. You were running illegally deceptive practices of calling your athletes student athletes when they were really indentured servants. And, Paige Beckers couldn't make as much as her classmate that wasn't an athlete simply because she was an athlete. Where it goes from here is because you were so flat-footed, you need to backtrack on creating the system of checks and balances in place, things like revenue sharing, things like a salary cap. And it's too late. Like that's the challenge that Charlie Baker has. The cat's out of the bag. Like if someone wants to build the richest collective in college sports and present an economic opportunity that 99 other colleges don't like, well, we live in a democracy, and you're the entity that didn't necessarily set those rules. So having to backtrack and back channel the entire NIL landscape in regard to the collectives, how they operate, how they work, it's a daunting task. And if you ask me, I don't think Charlie Baker's long for the NCAA, because I don't think he wants to deal with the spending 99% of his life in court. Now, from a brand standpoint, the Livy Dunn deals with Viore, the Paige Becker deals with Nike, like that's what NIL was always designed for. And those are the opportunities we're glad that exists. But turning college sports into professional sports because you arrogantly thought you were above what was student slavery is something that, listen, God bless Charlie Baker in his attempt to fix the system, but cat's out of the bag.
And one thing I just thought of, because I'm trying to contextualize this within the eyes of my potential viewer, which could be sports fans. I do some gaming on the side as well. Yep. And, people maybe in their mid-20s, maybe they just graduated college. Maybe they're thinking graduating college. There's a lot of money to be had within NIL. And, if somebody wanted to become an NIL marketing specialist in terms of a profession, what advice would you give to them as far as starting out, how they can break into the industry, etc.?
I would say 4 years ago it was be entrepreneurial, and now it is the same way if you want to become an agent. It is look at those agencies, look who's established, look who's credible. The one thing that we saw in 21 and 22 to some degree is anyone in their college dorm thought they could be an agent, and some student athletes thought they were worth more money than they were worth. Great example I ran into was we were working with a high school kid out of Nebraska who had a really unique skill set that made him very viral. And his dad was talking to someone after we started to negotiate a deal that planted dreams of big dollars in his head. And all of a sudden they were balking on an offer and coming back, and we want more, and we want more. And finally, after the third time of negotiating this thing, I was like, pull the offer. Like, he's got someone in his ear. And he did. 3 months later, they fired the agent. They came crawling back with on their knees and said, like, please, we want to work with you. And it was too late at that point because you were more interested in seeking a quick buck than building a brand. That would be my first and foremost advice. Like, there are agencies that do it really, really, really well. They have signed most of the bigger names in the sport. You're also seeing this divide between agencies that deal with influencers and agencies that deal with NIL athletes. So we talked about Bama Rush. There are agencies that go out and cultivate a network of influencers and basically capture inbound lead on brand deals while trying to sell mass amounts of influencer or celebrity at once. An NIL agent, let's say Excel, for instance. Excel has a roster of probably 30 athletes, but they are constantly selling those 30 athletes. And you'll hear the complaints from talent. Every talent's going to complain their agency doesn't sell them hard enough. But I can tell you, that established agency, like an Excel, like a Wasserman, like a CAA, like an Everett, they are constantly texting people saying, hey, this athlete might be great for this. This athlete might be great for that. They're going and they're push selling their athletes versus hoping it comes in via an inbound lead or push selling an idea and 100 different influencers. So from an NIL, if you want to be in NIL marketing as an NIL specialist, I think it's understanding not everyone's gotten rich. In fact, very few have gotten rich those who have gotten rich obviously have the social audiences to prove it. But those who have gotten rich in NIL are looking at agencies that can sell their athletic ability first and their social audiences second, and do so in a proactive manner.
That's interesting to hear. What's hot in the college football landscape right now is Bill Belichick and his 24-year-old girlfriend. But the drama around that, between him and Jordon Hudson, the CBS Sunday Morning interview happened, and Jordon interrupted, and the reporter, when asked about the question, "How did you guys meet?" she just shut it all down. She shut any talk of that down.
Yeah.
What do you think happened there? Why are they so quiet about it?
There's a bunch that happened there. I think the first lesson you take from it is, if I had shut that down because I'm not sleeping with the interviewee, no one thinks anything of it. Because Jordon is sleeping with Bill, it comes across as the girlfriend shutting the question down and not the publicist. So that's the first thing that comes across. Do not ever sleep with your publicist. Don't mix work and play. Don't shit where you eat. That's number one. Number two is, there is a gray area over what was negotiated in advance and by who. And so both sides have their story. I think both sides have questions that need to be asked about the backing of their stories. For instance, CBS's newsroom right now is total chaos because of the presidential lawsuit against 60 Minutes, in which 60 Minutes' head honcho resigned last week, and Sherry Redstone, who runs CBS, who just happens to be very, very good friends with Robert Kraft, is now pushing buttons editorially. So it's like, yeah, CBS can put out that statement. Sherry Redstone gave Robert Kraft the board position at Viacom, and Robert Kraft, to me, the bigger thing was the question on Bill being fired, because in that sense, they agreed that the separation was mutual. I'm sure there's paperwork to that degree, but if a random CBS reporter says, "Hey, you were fired," it's kind of taken as fact that you were fired, when it was probably legally legally it was probably what Bill was saying.
Right.
And then on Bill and Jordan's end, it's, where was your book publisher? Like, I texted 5 people. I was going through the book publicists who work for the company that published this book, and I was like, why is this person pitching Bill Belichick? Where is this person? Like, why is this person not involved? And if so, why are they involved? So there you have gray areas on both sides. It's like, was there a book publicist in the room? Was the publicist doing the negotiating on the interview? Were they pitching the interview? All of those things, the politics of how you arrange that stuff. It's all fast. It's all things I've done before. And one of the reasons why your audience here is going to be a bunch of Twitter, Boston sports, Twitter incels, is because they got really mad a couple years ago when I negotiated, hey, cover up my face and cover up my voice with multiple news stations around here. And their hero, Bill Belichick, couldn't do that. But the politics of how this was all negotiated is a he said, she said, he said situation at this point.
Jordon Hudson, I heard a rumor that that she might have, just like similar to how she was basically controlling everything that was going on with behind the scenes with that interview and what Bill was saying. Does she maybe have anything to do with the football side of things at UNC Football? Is she involved more than she should be?
I think she has less to do with the football side of things than Linda Holliday did in Foxborough. I think she doesn't know much about the sport. I think she sticks to the brand of Bill, the positioning of Bill. Obviously, the Foyers caught the positioning of Steve. You can't tell me Jawan Williams wasn't drafted in 2019 because Linda Holliday went to Vanderbilt, loves football. And Linda Holliday was a football groupie. I think that's the bottom line. She was a football groupie. Jordon seems to be a Belichick groupie. And the football groupie loved prancing around Gillette. Certainly knew that the draft was the perfect time to insert the Clee in to the computer and make it appear like the Clee was running the draft. And given the draft result in 2000, or 2020, the Clee might have been. And then just the backstory with Bill and some of the other rumors that we've had over the last 20 something years of his career, like he has deferred to whoever he's been dating. He has gone out of his way to those individuals. He is seemingly a very, very generous and giving romantic partner, which is the opposite of his perception of the football field. My whole thing is that the signs were there much, much sooner than the last 6 months when people started to realize, oh, Bill's in a 50-year age gap relationship. Like, this is odd. It's like, it was odd when Linda was prancing around like she ran Gillette Stadium.
Do you anticipate that Bill's job with UNC is in jeopardy due to her antics?
UNC is in an interesting place, and it goes both ways, right? So let's say this story kind of dies down, doesn't get any bigger. It is what it is. There are maybe one or two more side stories between now and September 1st, Labor Day. Then we've got all of this hype around Carolina football. People are talking about Carolina. They're not talking about Notre Dame. They're not talking about Alabama. They're not talking about Ohio State. And if you're Carolina, you love that. If you're Carolina and what you fear is you don't have any control over the story, and every 6 hours it seems like there's a new angle. Even in the last 24 hours, we're taping on Thursday. Last 24 hours, we had Bill's daughter-in-law chirping basically what is going to be her mother-in-law in the comments of an Instagram post. And then we had the real estate filings of one Jordon Hudson make, the New York Times page 6. New York Times page 6 now has profiles on all the Belichick kids. That's just your last 24 hours. And I compare it to what happened with Joe Biden after the first debate last year. Joe Biden had a terrible first debate. You had a whole bunch of people who had defended his cognitive reasoning for 4 years, finally realized, oh shit, we fucked up. And then over the next, I think it was 26 or 27 days, a new peel off the onion appeared every single day. Yeah, sometimes multiple times a day. If that happens here, I think this story is going to be too much for Carolina to handle. Carolina is still very much entrenched in the old boy, do the right thing, Dean Smith, Roy Williams, oldest public institution in America, I believe, old well, Southern hospitality. Like, that's the value system of that university. It's not necessarily a North Carolina equivalent of Southern charm. It is almost too late in the game to that. But if you see 7 or 8 more layers peel off this onion, there's going to be a ton of pressure to get out of that situation even before the first game. If it doesn't happen, it's going to be the most fun story in college football over the next 6 months.
And to even begin with, his move to even take a job with UNC versus NFL teams that might have wanted him or might have interviewed him, considered him, or even just taking a job in the ACC. Is he trying to hide maybe his deficiencies now in his coaching acumen? Does he still have what maybe he used to have as a coach?
I counter this and say he could do something at Carolina that no other coach can do, and that is, except for maybe Deion Sanders, and that is, with all of this buzz and with all of this hype, if they win, if he makes it to the finish line here, which is the first game of the season without this spiraling further out of control, if he builds this massive college football brand, all of a sudden the SEC and the Big Ten are looking at North Carolina and saying, like, we need to take North Carolina instead of Virginia Tech in our latest expansion. We need to take North Carolina instead of Miami or instead of Florida State. And if that pushes North Carolina out of the ACC, which sounds sacrilegious on the basketball side, but it's everything on the football side, and everything given what we've seen the ACC become in the last 10 years in terms of an apathetic, kind of lackluster conference, that's something that will be a very, very big notch in the Belichick cap that not a lot of people realize could exist or could appeal to him. You also could look at it the other way and say, like, okay, that contract's a 1-year contract. A lot of people assume, do you go to the NFL? Do you go to Atlanta? Do you go to or hypothetical, Kalen DeBoer struggles again at Alabama. Bill has a 9-2 season at North Carolina. Does Bill Belichick go and become Tuscaloosa Bill and try and do what Saban did? Like, that could be even more interesting than half the NFL jobs out there. College football is in a really good spot right now in terms of interest, in terms of buzz, in terms of hype. And a lot of it has been SEC and to a lesser extent the Big Ten. I think there are a lot of SEC jobs and a lot of those big time top quadrant, top 15 college football jobs that are better than the bottom 20 NFL jobs at this point.
That's totally fair. Well, you've given us a lot of good insight so far, and I'll be honest, I'm a little bit surprised. And don't take this the wrong way. You've handled yourself very well so far. I'm going to ask you to continue to bear with me, because from what I heard about you originally, I didn't know how this was going to go, because you've been very vocal against the grain in a lot of Boston sports radio talk.
I still am against the grain and vocal.
Jake is in Boston. Jake, go ahead.
Hi, Jake.
Are you guys on drugs over there?
No,
You
we're not.
have kids. No, you have kids that are Gen Z. If you give Gen Zers a reason to feel entitled and slack off, they're going to feel entitled and slack off.
That's right.
And if you're
right.
They have a TJ McConnell. Do you have a TJ McConnell? I'm not talking about talent. I'm talking about work ethic. If you go 6, you're going to go 7. And if you go 7, you're going to poop your pants like you did in Game 7 last year. Last year, you lost a series to Miami with home court advantage, with them coming through the play-in game, and them being a plus 400, while you were like a minus 900. This happened last year. This happened a couple years ago. This has happened consistently. So for you guys...
I can tell for sure. Let's get into that a little bit more outrageous side of you.
Okay.
Just a little bit more in depth. I understand that you've paid for some billboards on the highway to do some trolling. The first one I saw is the owl is no longer wise without his goat.
Yep.
What did that mean? What's the context behind it?
The context behind it is that legally you can't say Tom Brady's name or TB12 because he's trademarked it. Same thing with Belichick. So you're looking at ways around advertising a direct statement, and the whole billboard was to point out Bill's record and lack of success without Tom Brady. And during that time, which was literally 2021, which would be 1 year and a Super Bowl post Brady's departure, everyone thought Bill Belichick was still the shit, the GOAT, etc. So it caught a lot of people off guard. But again, it came back to trends I was seeing socially, things I was seeing with Linda, things I was seeing, understanding that, at least in my estimation, it was Tom Brady's dynasty. And really placing that bet and saying, yeah, no, Bill's not going to lead this team to another Super Bowl. Tom Brady just won another Super Bowl. So that the whole message was to skirt around copyright. The bottom line of the message was very much my mindset was I wanted to own the week that Tom Brady came back to some capacity. To me, that was fun. Like the attention, the drama, I felt like I had skin in the game. When that field goal hit the uprights, I was very, very happy as a human being. But, to me, the goal was to own that week, and felt like I did to some degree.
For sure. So that was the goal of that billboard. What about this past Super Bowl? You had a billboard put up in Philadelphia trolling the Eagles about Taylor Swift.
Yes.
You're a Taylor Swift super fan. I've heard about it. Swiftie.
Yeah.
And so I have to ask, what do you think about Taylor and Travis Kelce? Is he the one?
I am what they call a Kaylor, Kaylor. And those are people who believe that in 2013, 2014-ish, 1989 era, there was something between Taylor Swift and Karlie Kloss. And it was more than just a friendship. There was some video that happened at a New York City nightclub of them two getting a little too steamy. I do believe there was something there. And in fact, honestly, one of the reasons why I thought there was something there was that Karlie very much took on the alpha role in that relationship. And so I thought that was part of a dynamic that I think Taylor was seeking and craving out at the time. So for me, like, Taylor and Travis is so much fun from a football fan perspective. I have Eagle fans friends who, as soon as Taylor and Travis started dating, which happened after an Eagles-Chiefs Super Bowl, just started to plant the idea, like, if Taylor ever gets to a Super Bowl and it's Taylor and Travis versus the Eagles, the NFL is going to rig it against you, and I kind of use that as that boogeyman against the Eagle fan friends I have for several months. So it was fun. It was a playoff of that. It was a playoff of that boogeyman, mindset of trying to make Eagles fans uncomfortable with the fact that a 5'9" blonde woman could really ruin their Super Bowl dreams. Of course, the opposite happened, but it was a fun lead up in that week leading up to it.
If you call it Super Bowl Swifty 8, we're not going to take any of your calls until after. I love that, Swifty 8. Oh, it's great. Swifty 8. So we love the number 13. Super Bowl will be Taylor's 13th game of the season in person. 58 is 5 plus 8, which equals 13. On February 11th, the game takes place. That's 2 plus 11, that's 13. The Chiefs are playing the 49ers. 4 plus 9 is 13. Brock Purdy, the other quarterback, he wears 13. To get from Tokyo to Las Vegas, that will be a 13-hour flight after Taylor's 13th international Aaron Sports show.
So you like this relationship? You would want it to stay if it was up to you?
Oh, I wish Tom Brady had Giselle murdered in like 2015 and started dating Taylor Swift. That's what I wish happened.
Fair enough.
That was my dream. My dream was TB12 and TS13. That was my dream. I hate Giselle, obviously. It should have been Tom and Giselle, but Taylor Swift introducing a whole new layer of the football experience. And I think you're going to see, I think this is the Jordon Hudson piece. If Jordon Hudson and Bill Belichick make it to opening night in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, there needs to be a camera on her the whole entire fucking time. And the outrageous side of me was sending emails to producers I knew at CBS and NBC. And I think there was one I sent after the Bills game, and Kelce gets called for a penalty. And I'm like, why the fuck didn't you show Taylor Swift's reaction there? Like, there are 5 million people watching that game just for that reaction, just for her. Show that fucking thing. And so to hear the dads, Brads, and Chads whine about that, phenomenal. There are 5 million people to 10 million people watching football or watching Chiefs football because of Taylor Swift. Lock a camera in on her. Show her more.
Since your whole thing nowadays is around, or for a while now, has been around the wives and the girlfriends, what about some other wives and girlfriends? Who might be the next Taylor and Travis, if there are any right now?
It's so hard to duplicate that. Like, that's impossible to duplicate because she's so big and she's the alpha of that relationship. Jordon Hudson. How about that? It's just there's been no other perfect storm quite like it, and it's really interesting to talk about, and it's crossed that mainstream conversation to the point where your mom and your dad know about it, and they're like, "Did you hear what Bill Belichick did? Did you hear what Jordon did?" Honestly, it could be Jordon. It might as well. There's no one else in the stratosphere of pop stardom quite like Taylor Swift. The only other one I could imagine would be, and it could be college football related once she gets there, but who does Kai Trump end up dating? That could, because Kai Trump has the followers and every 14, 15-year-old boy has a crush on her. And it's starting, there's obviously mainstream attention because of who her grandfather is. But I think in the WAG circle, there's Taylor Swift, and then no one else is on the same planet. And then you have the Josh Allens and the Haley Steinfelds, obviously the Staffords. You have that level, and then you have, obviously, the next step down. My whole thing was we spend too much time on the top of the rung and without realizing that you've got 53 potential significant other spouses who could potentially impact their husband, their hubby's ability to be ready on a Sunday afternoon at 1:00. And So we'll spend all the time talking about Giselle. We'll spend all the time talking about Taylor Swift. What we won't necessarily talk about is, and it came up, it's David Andrews, you've got a 6-month-old, you're the center of the football team, you're a captain, and I know because your wife Mackenzie is broadcasting that your kid is sick, that my center is not 100%. My center got 4 hours of sleep instead of 8. And those are the individuals who aren't media trained. So that's why this is where this mantra came, because the teams don't do media training with everyone in the inner circle. They do it just with the athlete. So the extensions of the athletes, as we saw with Jen Belichick, not media trained, doesn't know necessarily how to react in the moment, doesn't necessarily know things like we tell athletes that we work with, and most everyone does. Do not broadcast a place you're in live in the moment. There have been so many athlete robberies. Like, why are you going to broadcast that you're out to dinner to someone who could go and rob your house in 15 minutes? Save that till after. Can you wait 3 hours to post that you went to dinner at X, Y, and Z till you got home? But that's something that you get taught, day 2 of media training. Wives don't know it.
Any specific thoughts about Brittany Mahomes?
I have done the biggest 180 on Brittany Mahomes. I love Brittany Mahomes. Wow. I think she is batshit in a good way. They've also been together forever. So it's a little bit different in that context where they have stuck together through thick and thin. Like, she is unapologetically herself. She is all in for her man. It's you deal with the good and the bad. She is obnoxious in a good, fun way. I like Brittany Mahomes. I think that's been my biggest 180. I like when Brittany and Taylor go out together, and all of Taylor's friends who think, all Taylor's Reddit army who don't like the political aspect of Brittany Mahomes start to whine, and it's like, guys, Brittany Mahomes has a friend. Like, great. So I've done the 180. I really like Brittany Mahomes. I think we'd be fun together. Last
thing I had on this topic was I have a little bit of a theory about, or maybe it's not necessarily a theory, but an opinion about and this goes along with the wives and girlfriends theme. I feel like there's a little bit of colorism that surrounds media attention to wives and girlfriends as well. Like, for example, Lamar Jackson, MVP of the league, multi-time MVP of the league. Yep. Nobody has given media attention to Lamar Jackson's wife or girlfriend ever. Yep. But they love to talk about Josh Allen's, and I'm not even saying that Haley Steinfeld can be compared in that area, but there's other examples of it. Brittany Mahomes wasn't necessarily remarkable in terms of media attention prior to Patrick Mahomes' stardom.
Correct. I'll give you a good example of that. How much did you hear about Chantel Mayo in the last 12 months?
Not that much. I'm not that tapped into the Boston Twitter.
So Chantel Mayo, Gerard's wife, you could tell when Gerard was working or not because Chantel would come up on Instagram Live and talk to her people. Usually when she was bored, when Gerard was actually working or traveling. Chantel, I remember going on air, I think it was 2 years ago, saying she was so social media obsessed where it was going to be a problem. And to her credit, wasn't as big of a problem as I thought, except she very bodaciously bragged we would win more than 4 games, basically put down the previous administration. This was all on Instagram Live, and I remember arguing with reporters and saying, why the fuck don't you cover her Instagram Lives? She's going to give you more than Gerard. She'll give you the stuff that Gerard will give her while cuddling because she thinks she's talking to her 100 friends on Instagram Live. So if I'm Mike Reese, why am I not in there doing my job? If I'm Mike Florio, why am I not in there trying to get a tidbit? So here was someone who I thought was going to be a major challenge. Now, she did have an episode or two. Most notably, they threw a stupidly lavish holiday party right after getting the shit kicked out of them in Arizona. And they did so, I forget what the timing was, but the timing, I believe, was also a short week. And people were texting me about it. I was like, I see it. I see it. Like, she gave props to all her vendors. She thought she was the coach's wife / event organizer. And I thought that was really interesting and fascinating right in the middle of a 4-win season when your husband's getting crucified, knocked around for playing cards on the back of the league worst plane on the way home from getting your butt kicked, and coming into a short week where you're playing on a Saturday, I believe. But to your point, Boston media talked about Linda. They talked about Jordon. They never talked about Chantel. And Chantel was doing a lot where they have a big Galentine's Day event that Chantel's done for the last 6 years. Chantel's done other events. Chantel's an event planner around here. You don't think Chantel wants publicity on her eyeballs and her events? She would absolutely crave and covet that. It didn't happen. And so, yeah, to your point, some of it does exist.
Fair enough. And just as we're winding down here, I kind of need to know still, at what point can players have lives and extracurricular ventures outside of the sport to where, what is the bright line for where it becomes a problem and it affects their game, in your opinion?
So I think some of it depends on the individual and the individual knowing just how to get themselves into peak performance or peak shape and how not to do something stupid like Juju Smith-Schuster broadcasting that he's literally playing Madden, on a Tuesday night at 3 a.m. because he can't help himself. I think there's that aspect of it where, and LeBron's a great example. LeBron knows what he needs to do at age 40 to get his body prepared to play NBA basketball. LeBron's injury history has been exceptionally, him and Brady and those guys who have done it now in their late 30s and early 40s, Al Horford, like they know how to manage themselves. They know how to manage their bodies. They're extremely professional. Younger athletes are more vulnerable to bullshit. They're more vulnerable to bullshit when it comes to broadcasting themselves, when it comes to attaching themselves to the wrong people, attaching themselves to the wrong significant other, attaching themselves to the wrong mistress. I'm not saying you can't have a private life, but fuck, I'm watching you. Don't broadcast it 24/7, 365. The other thing I would mention, and it's, if you look at, and this is something that's on the teams to educate their athletes more so than the athletes, because they're not looking at psychological aspects of it. I love following, I forget the guy's account. He's on Twitter. He does all of the astrology bullshit. He's like, this starting five works better than this starting five because here's the synergy between these astrological signs and that. My favorite theory was when I saw Mac Jones adopt a little tiny dog for a starting quarterback, a beta dog, I was like, that is not a quarterback's dog. Backup quarterback dog, I have one, golden retriever. Starting quarterback dog, Tom Brady is a pit bull. And you just start to think about themes like that. Like, what are personality traits that lead to you adopting or buying a certain type of animal, certain type of dog, certain type of jewelry? Like, your personal brand and yet the perception of what you want to throw out there to the public domain. And yes, obviously you could feel very, very comfortable in yourself, but I look at Mac Jones and I look at Rose Jones, the dog, and I'm like, I don't know if I can ever have you ever take you seriously as a starting quarterback again if your dog is this big. I can't throw you in a 2-minute drill with the Super Bowl on the line. So I think there's a lot of that perception of one, don't give me everything. Dating is the same way. Like, you don't throw your entire playbook out there on the first date and then you just inundate someone with so much information where they just can expose and just beat the crap out of you here going forward. Don't do stupid shit. Don't give me everything on the first date or don't throw everything out there. Understand that, your personality can come across in your decisions and your decision making. So if you're not a clutch athlete like Aaron Judge probably shouldn't have 2 wuss dogs. I know he loves them, but you show me 2 wuss dogs and you show me your October batting average, I think there's a correlation between the two of them. I think it's your personality. And It's all the Danny Ainge, like I forget what it's called, the ISTG, the ISTJ, that kind of stuff. I think that matters. Yeah, I think all that stuff matters to some degree. And then the other thing is, I'm not one, but compulsive gamblers feast off of any information that they can get. So anything you throw out there about, I didn't get enough sleep, someone in my family is sick, I like this song today instead of that song, I have this kind of dog, I have this opinion, I saw this on the news last night. Anything can be used for a gambler seeking to get an edge.
No, that's fair for sure. And I think a lot of the same things happen in a normal job. In business, for example, if you are getting your work done and, you have a life outside of work, of course, and if you're broadcasting that to, for example, coworkers that you have on social media, and this is affecting your work, that's going to be subject to scrutiny from your coworkers in a similar way, I feel like.
And it can be really down to minute details. So Cole Strange, who's a center for the Patriots, posted a happy birthday post on Instagram to his girlfriend. The first picture in the carousel, the girlfriend doesn't have any makeup on. And while a cute picture, that is the front of your carousel of all the pictures you could have chosen. She's got I wouldn't call it a cold, like she's got a mark on her lip, like a red mark. And she's got a zit right here, and she's got that right there. And like, you're the center of the New England Patriots. Your job is to protect my franchise quarterback. And you don't know that you can't put a picture of your girlfriend that's not her best picture at the front of an Instagram carousel. Like, you deal with models, they obsess about that shit. Your girlfriend's a cheerleader, she obsesses about that shit. And I'm sure she's not going to say it to your face, but I'm 100% sure she's not choosing that photo for the top of your carousel. That's the guy who's protecting Drake May. Like, sometimes that 17-year-old Swiftie brain that psychoanalyzes text for 55 minutes before sending it, sometimes they know what they're doing.
Yeah, for sure. Fair enough. Do you have, I know content is king for you, any socials you wanna shout out real quick? Oh,
I think part of the fun is I've kept my socials under wraps. Like, my haters find him. That's great. I don't care. But yeah, I think that was part of the fun for a long time, was these people try to dox me.
Yeah.
Put up that billboard and they're like, who the fuck? Why can't I find his fucking Twitter? Why can't I find something he said like 30 years ago? What they did find, ironically enough, was a video from 2004 at the Super Bowl. I think it was 20. It's 3 years after 9/11. That's where I come back on this. So I'm walking out of the NFL experience in Houston, and a guy dressed up as a tree comes out and spooks me. And like, I'm young, like I'm not in a city I know, and I was really pissed off at this tree. And I went off on the tree and I was like, who do you work for? Where I need something to sign before you can use that on camera, yada, yada, yada. And so that was found. And I'm like, fuck, that actually existed? Like, I kind of put it beside me for 17 years, forgot about it. Found it. I think the worst part was I had my face. Steve Young had painted my face like 10 minutes beforehand, painted a bad Patriot logo on my face. Whereas wearing a jersey is like, oh, this is like finding your awkward self and having that broadcast to the world. Now I do want to know what wasn't signed and what my rights were. Maybe I have a case just like Bill to sue CBS over something and make some money. But I think the reality is like, you kind of have to be yourself in that regard. I kind of, by virtue of doing this, skate the professional lines a bit, but I think part of what makes me really good from a crisis comms and a brand positioning standpoint is I can think like your worst enemy. Like, I can go up to Mac Jones and say, like, I know your fucking weaknesses. Like, I know your dog is a beta. I know your dog's a beta. I know your Reputation outfit sucked. Like, I know all this stuff about where your weaknesses are. So maybe we should work together so I can protect you against those when those come up. You know, Bill and Jordon, like if Jordon came to me and we had a conversation today, I'd be like, Jordon, I can help you. If you listen to me, it's great. I could certainly help you. Like one of my non-sports projects was literally working on Scandoval Fallout. So if I could deal with Scandoval, I could deal with you. Oh, yeah.
From Vanderpump.
From Vanderpump.
No way.
Oh, yeah. So
I just watched that episode last night with my girlfriend.
Which one?
Scandoval.
Oh, yeah. So one of my favorite stories. So with Scandoval, got a call from their publicist at 4:30. Was working with a weight loss brand. They had a drink mix. Obviously, you bring in the bartenders from Vanderpump to help sell it. Had a great campaign shoot a couple months beforehand. And we were supposed to have a media day to launch a sweepstakes to win a trip to LA to go meet those guys and go tour all the Vanderpump bars. Friday before it launches, get a call from or Friday after it launches and before the media day, get a call from their manager saying, look at TMZ right now. It's not good. We're going to have to bag this media tour. And I see it and I'm like, damn, fuck. Holy shit. Of course, this is coming at 4:30 on a Friday. Then our next reaction was I had to get all of the people involved with the brand who were freaking the fuck out on the same page and be like, guys, number one, we're in reality TV. You don't sign up to do reality TV or work with anyone in reality TV without realizing that you expect them to sleep around and you expect them to hook up with each other and you expect and you anticipate drama. So as long as nothing illegal happened, we really not only can't do anything, but I wouldn't want to do anything because you run into a Streisand effect situation where so many people are talking about the controversy. And the first thing they do is they go to the social media of both of these individuals, of both Toms, see our stuff right there. And it's a free ad, free 30-second ad that we would have to spend tens of thousands of dollars otherwise to generate the same CPM. So had to obviously calm some nervous fears. Now around them, obviously, both Tom's lives were spiraling. And, you know, Coca-Cola would have been pulling brand deals. You know, like brand deals in that sense are hard to keep when the world is crumbling around you. We had the right brand at the right time to do it. Remain loyal to those guys. And I remember talking to the Post for Page 6 about it because, of course, we had to bag the media tour. And Page 6 was, the reporter was like, you do know we have to write that you bagged this interview. And I was like, I know. It's like, do you want to say anything about it? I go, relationship is still intact. By the way, enter to win the sweepstakes because you're going to learn the gossip before anyone else. And they ran with that quote basically verbatim. And I was like, yeah, that's how you handle that. That's how you crisis calm that shit. Sweepstakes was great. Winners went out in July. And then I realized like everything Tom Sandoval did was going viral. It was like Jordan Hudson. You know, everything Jordan does was engaging at 7, 8, 9, 10 times rate. Now, granted, comments were brutal, but I was like, Tom, like, don't read the comments, but we need you to do this post for us because it's in your contract. But you've got to leave the comments on because the comments fuel the algorithm, which fuel the engagement, which fuel the eyeballs, which I want. That's what I need. I need the algorithm to win on this one. He's like, okay, I get it. And so after that, I want to say, you know, a year and a half had passed and their restaurant closed down in December. And they brought me on to help consult on how do we make some money before we close this restaurant. And what was really interesting about that experience and from a marketing standpoint is you had three personalities. I felt like I was dealing with Tom, Bill, and Robert at the same time, but you had Tom, you had their other gentleman, Greg, who was part of the show. And you were sort of the mediary in between it. But you realize like those guys banked on Bravo to sell the show or E to sell the restaurant because people would see it. They'd be like, I want to go out to this when we're in LA. And I'm like, well, what do you guys do for email marketing? They're like, we haven't done much. It's like, well, do you have emails? It's like, no, we have a couple hundred. And then do you have like your Resi emails? It's like, yeah, we can do something with that. And I'm like, what about your socials? It's like, well, we haven't really done a lot because all the comments are really mean. And I'm like, guys, all this can work in your advantage. You just have to actually do the marketing because you've got everyone's data. Everything you do goes viral. Might not always be viral in a positive way, but you have the data and everything you do goes viral. Like, it should be relatively easy to make money. And they had a really good last 2 months. Wasn't enough to salvage the business, but it was enough to kind of carve into their debt, of which they had a ton of debt when they kind of ran into Scandoval and just the place in general being very expensive. So, when I talk about like, hey, here's what Bill and Jordon are going through, it's like, well, I've dealt with that. Like, I've advised that. I could tell Jordon what to do. Like, I wasn't surprised they fought back yesterday, but I would have gone one step further. I would have brought Sherry Redstone's name into the equation and seen if I could muddy the waters by combining the Sherry Redstone, CBS News, Mutiny, 60-minute story with this, what was supposed to be a puff piece that you probably botched.
That makes perfect sense. And the way you approached those crises made perfect sense to me, honestly. Well, that is everything I had for you today, Jake. I really appreciate you hopping on today. And it was really good to get your insight. And I think it will help a lot of people, maybe a lot of your haters, see a little bit of inside the mind when it comes to you. But yeah, just really appreciate it.
All right, Kyle, appreciate it. Right. I'll see you and Adam somewhere here soon.
Yeah, absolutely. See you soon.